Welcome back to our channel where we share updates and untold stories about Catherine, Princess of Wales and her royal family. Today, we bring you some news. King Charles breaks down as Prince Edward speaks out on Diana. How Prince Edward's alleged revelations about Diana have shaken the very foundations of the monarchy is the subject of the book, The Quiet Prince's Storm. It has been claimed that an unexpected quake has emerged from the most improbable of places inside the sacred and quiet hallways of Buckingham Palace, where tradition serves as the foundation and stillness serves as a protection. Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh, who has been considered for a long time to be the most subdued and unwavering member of the royal family, is said to have broken a nearly 3-decade-long silence on the most delicate of topics, his late sister-in-law, Diana, Princess of Wales. There have been shockwaves sent through the institution as a result of the purported admissions, which are supposed to have been delivered in a private environment, but have had a significant impact. According to the reports, his older brother, King Charles III, has been left severely upset. It was said that the king, who had spent his whole reign carefully navigating the lengthy shadow of his past, was visibly distraught and greatly agitated by the reappearance of a history that he had fought diligently to move beyond. The monarch was 75 years old at the time for this. The statements made by Prince Edward were not a sentimental homage, but rather a genuine and unfiltered comment on the great strain and isolation that Diana had to endure inside the tight boundaries of the monarchy, according to sources that are close to the royal household. A bitter chapter in the Windsor tale has been revived as a result of his purported comment, which has been characterized by an insider as a confession of a shared truth. This has forced the family to face a ghost that they had assumed was now at peace. The abrupt and forthright departure of a man who has established his career on prudence and unflinching commitment to the crown has prompted the critical issue of why this departure occurred at this particular time. Further, what does this imply for a monarchy that is already struggling to find its place in the world in the 21st century? It seems that the prince, who has been silent, has now spoken, and by doing so, he may have set off a tempest that has the potential to reshape the destiny of the House of Windsor. An unexpected messenger. A portrait of Prince Edward, the Prince of Wales. In order to comprehend the immensity of this purported occurrence, it is necessary to first comprehend the one who is at the core of it. Since his birth in 1964, Prince Edward has always been the Windsor family member who has remained in the background rather than on stage. The fact that he was the fourth and youngest child of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip allowed him to grow up outside of the keen gaze of the direct line of succession. This advantage allowed him to experience a degree of normality that his siblings were never able to experience. During the time when Charles was being prepared for the throne, Anne was establishing herself as a powerful equestrian, and Andrew was vying for the limelight. Edward stayed in the background, which was a noticeable absence. A conspicuous lack of the scandal and controversy that has afflicted his brothers has been a defining characteristic of his public demeanor, which has been one of quiet duty throughout the years. After a short and allegedly miserable tenure in the Royal Marines, which he abandoned in 1987, signifying an early departure from conventional royal standards, he followed a career in the arts and founded a television production firm called Ardent Productions. Since then, he has been a successful businessman. In spite of the fact that the endeavor was received with variable levels of success and allegations that he was using his royal position to his advantage, it was evidence of his ambition to carve his own path. The fact that he wed Sophie Rhys-Jones in 1999 contributed to the further consolidation of his reputation as a reliable and steady royal. Together, the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh have become vital working members of the family, especially in the aftermath of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's departure and Prince Andrew's public humiliation. Their marriage has been extraordinarily long-lasting by the norms of the Windsor family, and they have become an indispensable resource for the family. They are considered to be the dependable foundations upon which the contemporary monarchy is built. They are unassuming, very diligent, and quite discreet. It is precisely this notoriety that makes the alleged statements he made about Diana so incendiary on the internet. As the ultimate custodian of royal secrets and a quiet repository of family history, Edward has served in this capacity for over 3 decades. He was able to withstand the storm of Charles and Diana's turbulent divorce, the public agony that followed her death, and the ensuing decades of discussion over her legacy, all without expressing a single word in public about the subject. His allegiance was not to a certain individual, but rather to the organization as a whole. As the guardian of the meticulously manufactured image of the crown, he was a living embodiment of the family's age-old philosophy, which is, never complain, never explain. At the age of 60, he is said to have deviated from this practice that he has pursued throughout his whole life, which indicates a significant change. Have you reached a point when the burden of a long-held secret is too much for you to bear? Is it possible that the passage of time has provided him with a fresh viewpoint, prompting him to reveal a reality that he believed had been concealed from him? Whatever the cause may be, the most reserved of princes has emerged into the spotlight, and his remarks carry the weight of a lifetime of observation. A re-examination of the relationship between Edward and Diana, a bond that was forged in silence. A quieter and more delicate dynamic was apparently forming behind the scenes, and it was a link between the Princess of Wales and her youngest brother-in-law. This was happening while the public was transfixed on the epic and tragic romance that Charles and Diana, the Prince of Wales, were experiencing. It was not a romantic relationship, nor was it an open alliance. Rather, it was a tacit agreement between two people who, in their own unique ways, felt like outsiders inside the mighty royal machine. Edward was a quiet spectator from the beginning of Diana's life, from the time she was a bashful girl forced into the limelight all across the world. He saw the machinery of the monarchy close in around her, the cold formalities, the unspoken norms, and the enormous pressure to comply. He also saw the icy formalities. It is said that Edward was more empathic and personable than Charles, who was weighed down by the responsibilities of being an heir and was often viewed as being distant towards others. Once upon a time, a former member of the royal staff related a fascinating story that has since been incorporated into the legend of the palace. At a formal family dinner, Edward was the only one who noticed Diana's obvious sorrow. He did so despite the fact that everyone else was maintaining a stiff upper lip, and their discourse was courteous but aloof. While the others continued on with their activities, it is stated that he approached her in a low voice and asked her a straightforward and human question. "Diana, are you okay?" In the context of the Windsor family, when expressing one's feelings was sometimes considered a sign of weakness, this seemingly little gesture of compassion was very significant. According to reports, it opened a door that was quiet between them. Despite the fact that they did not communicate very much, individuals who were there said that their encounters were characterized by a shared glance or a subtle gesture that conveyed a great deal of information. Another report, which was provided by a former assistant, said that whenever Diana entered a room, Edward was always the first to rise up and come toward her. This was a modest but meaningful show of solidarity in an atmosphere that often left her feeling alienated. It is said that Prince Charles, who was reportedly dubious of his younger brother's sentiments, took note of this silent closeness, which was especially noticeable to Prince Charles. It is said that Charles faced Edward personally at a stormy meeting that took place at Balmoral Castle, which is the family's getaway in Scotland. "Why are you so sympathetic to her?" the future king asked, his annoyance audible to everyone around him. "Are you unable to understand that she is causing this family to fall apart?" The manner in which Edward responded was typical of his temperament. There was no argument or defense offered by him. He just exited the environment. In reality, it was an act of quiet resistance rather than a sign of despair. His efforts, both at the time and during Diana's tumultuous years as a princess, cemented his status as a quiet and faithful defender of a lady who was straining under an unimaginable weight. The culmination of this implicit allegiance was the worst event of all, which was the abrupt and horrible death of Diana, which occurred on August 31, 1997, in a vehicle accident in Paris. An unproven but persistent allegation asserts Prince Edward displayed the most deep sadness in the aftermath of the disaster, when the royal family was being criticized by the public for what was believed to be a lack of emotion on their part. It is said that Edward, who was heartbroken by the news, sobbed openly while the rest of the world saw a family that was stern and quiet while they were hidden in Balmoral. In addition, there is a very significant and influential story that indicates he secretly traveled to Paris prior to the return of Diana's corpse to the United Kingdom. It is said that he asked to visit her at the Pitié-Salpêtrière hospital because he needed a quiet opportunity to say his goodbyes before the public spectacle started. Despite the fact that the palace has never verified this, the myth has persisted among those who follow the royal family as a witness to the profound nature of his relationship with Diana, a relationship that went beyond the frigid formality of their public existence. The years that followed her passing brought to an even greater withdrawal on Edward's part about the matter. He was adamant in his refusal to participate in any interviews that may include her, and he avoided attending any gatherings that centered on her name. Not only was this a type of grief, but it was also a sort of forgetfulness which was not appropriate for the official royal writing. Additionally, it presented itself in a distancing from Camilla Parker Bowles that was not just silent, but also obvious. It is said that Edward was the last member of the immediate family to give his congratulations at the wedding of Charles and Camilla in the year 2005. According to a particularly scathing story, his statement in the guest book was brief and direct, and it read as follows: "May your happiness not come at the expense of others." These anecdotes, regardless of whether or not they are real, present a picture of a guy who had a profound amount of dedication to Diana's memory. This background is what gives his new supposed confession such startling force, and it is this past that underlies it. The Duke is believed to have finally expressed his long-held views in a private chat with a reliable source, with his voice allegedly shaking with emotion. This takes place in the context of the conversation. According to a comment attributed to him, he said, "She did not deserve any of that. Not the being alone, not the betrayal," she said. "She had a more regal bearing than any of us." This single strong remark, if it is true, puts everything into a new perspective. Not only was the quiet watcher a witness, but he was also a silent custodian of her suffering while he was there. The underpinnings of the royal narrative have started to break, now that he has spoken, and this change has occurred. The enduring and disruptive legacy of Diana is referred to as the ghost in the machine. To understand why Prince Edward's comments continue to have such a significant influence on the modern world, it is necessary to consider the enormous and long-lasting impact that Diana had on the monarchy. The House of Windsor had been operating according to a code of behavior that was hundreds of years old prior to her arrival. Rather than being humans, they were symbols. They were figures of state rather than feeling individuals. In order to convey a sense of stability, continuity, and an almost mystical transcendence from the chaotic reality of ordinary life, their image was painstakingly managed. First, there was Diana. She destroyed that carefully created veneer, despite the fact that she was young, charming, and had an almost uncanny capacity to connect with people. She did not attempt to conceal her feelings. Rather, she wore them boldly. She wept, she laughed, and she shared her suffering, and in doing so, she provided the general people with something that they had never seen from a royal before: authenticity. Through her actions, she brought humanity to the establishment by demonstrating that beyond the palace walls and the magnificence of the ceremonies were individuals who had experienced feelings of isolation, grief, and suffering. As a result of her genuineness, she became a worldwide celebrity. Each and every place she went, throngs yelled her name out loud. There was a constant pursuit of her by photographers. As time went on, her popularity quickly surpassed that of her husband and even sometimes that of the Queen herself. Significant and long-lasting difficulties were formed within the family as a result of this change in public emphasis. After being used to directing its own narrative, the institution discovered that it was at the whim of a phenomena that it was unable to regulate and could not even comprehend. Diana's reluctance to remain quiet was the most significant threat she posed to the established order. She spoke with devastating candor about her bulimia, her husband's infidelity. "Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded," and the lack of support she felt from the establishment in her now infamous interview with Martin Bashir for the Panorama magazine in 1995. This interview was a declaration of war against the never complain, never explain philosophy, and it shook the very foundations of the entire monarchy. In spite of the fact that her honesty won the hearts of millions of people, the family saw it as a devastating act of betrayal. In doing so, she had violated the most fundamental principle. She had exposed the family's dirty linen to the world. However, by doing so, she had also brought to light the monarchy as an organization that was, in many respects, antiquated, inflexible, and ill-equipped to deal with the emotional demands of its members. It was further highlighted by her philanthropic activity that this disparity existed. Diana was not content to just give her name to causes, rather she actively participated in them. The sight of her shaking hands with an AIDS sufferer without gloves, which occurred at a period when the illness was cloaked in dread and stigma, conveyed a strong message of compassion all around the globe. An unrecognized humanitarian disaster was brought to the attention of the whole world by her journey over a minefield in Angola that had been partly cleared. She did not utilize her platform to boost the grandeur of the crown. Rather, she used it to offer a voice to those who did not have one. This not only established her as the people's princess, but it also established her as a force that would operate outside of the conventional framework of royal authority. Everything came to a climax when she passed away in the year 1997. One of the most instructive examples of how not to respond to a contemporary crisis was the first response from the royal family. Following the established procedure, they stayed in a remote location in Balmoral, and for many days there was an eerie quiet emanating from the castle. A mourning public saw the decision to not fly the royal standard at half-mast above Buckingham Palace as an act of shocking coldness, despite the fact that it was legally right. According to procedure, the royal standard is only flown while the monarch is in residence. The reaction of the general populace was intense. The entrances to Kensington Palace and Buckingham Palace were converted into public shrines by an abundance of flowers and tributes of all kinds. The media, in an effort to channel the fury of the people, carried headlines such as, "Show us you care." The disparity between the public outpouring of sorrow and the palace's resolute silence resulted in a crisis of trust in the monarchy that had not been witnessed in modern times. It was only after a great deal of pressure that the Queen finally made her way back to London and gave a live television speech during which she addressed the country as your Queen and as a grandmother. This was a rare and essential concession, a tacit recognition that the previous methods were no longer enough. A shift in the monarchy was brought about by Diana's passing. It needed to become more transparent, more emotive, and more in touch with the people it served as a public institution. Prince Edward was there and observant during all of this. He saw the struggle of the system, he seen the fury of the people, and he witnessed his family being pushed into a shift that was both painful and essential. Through the decades that followed, he remained silent, not just because he was experiencing personal loss, but also because he was witnessing a fundamental and seismic transformation in the organization that he was meant to serve. Diana had both in life and in death acted as a mirror for the monarchy, and ever since she passed away, they have been struggling to come to terms with the reflection she created. A monarchy on unstable ground. The consequences of the modern-day fallout. The reported remarks made by Prince Edward have not been left in a devoid of context, due to the fact that they have erupted at a time when the monarchy is in a serious state of vulnerability. They have reopened old wounds and created new obstacles for its important leaders. When it comes to King Charles III, the moment is very emotionally significant. His reign is still in its infancy, and he has worked carefully to portray an image of a forward-looking and steady monarchical figure. This comes after a lifetime of waiting for his reign to begin. However, the lasting mark that his past with Diana has left on his legacy will never be erased. The statements made by Edward in particular, the declaration that Diana was more royal than any of us, serve as a bitter reminder of Charles's previous failings and the public's unwavering compassion for his first wife. This is not only a question of public relations for the king, rather it is something that is very close to his heart. The fact that he is forced to face the memory of a lady whose suffering was integrally related to his acts is a reality that affects his connection with the public and, according to reports, with his own feelings. From the perspective of Prince William, the Prince of Wales, the issue is very complicated. The fact that he is the heir to the kingdom puts him in a precarious position. He is the dedicated son who has tenderly maintained his mother's memory by creating awards in her honor and speaking about the impact that she has had on his life. On the other hand, he is also the future king, and he is responsible with safeguarding the continuation of the monarchy. Throughout his tenure, he has endeavored to steer the organization into a contemporary period, one that goes beyond the War of the Waleses. The discoveries made by Edward pose a danger to this delicately maintained equilibrium. William is compelled to face the most distressing parts of his mother's narrative, which has the potential to put him at odds with his father and the organization that he is meant to command. Now is the time for him to make a decision about how to embrace this reborn reality without causing the crown that he will one day wear to become unstable. There is a possibility that Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, may experience the words of Edward as a long overdue vindication. By drawing clear comparisons between the media's treatment of his mother and that of his bride, Meghan Markle, Harry has been the most outspoken opponent of the royal machine. He has also been the most vociferous critic of the royal family. According to his own account, the motivation for his decision to stand down from royal responsibilities was a wish to shield his family from the same forces that he feels were responsible for his mother's suffering. The fact that Edward, a prominent player in the establishment, is now expressing what seems to be some of Harry's most fundamental complaints, namely that the system is unsupportive and alienating, may be seen as a forceful validation. On the other hand, it can bring about a further divide. In the event that even the most reserved members of the Windsor family admit the shortcomings of the institution, it will not only bolster Harry's narrative, but it may also prompt the rest of the family to close ranks even more closely, further isolating the Sussexes. Furthermore, Edward's claimed words have caused waves to be felt across the whole royal ecology, not just among the close family. Their actions rekindle the debate over the monarchy's ability to bring about true change and its continued relevance. There is a great deal of damage that may be caused by the concept of hidden facts and unresolved anguish at the core of the royal family in this day and age of increased scrutiny, when openness and accountability are expected of all public institutions. The court of public opinion, the devastating effects of the media, and the varying reactions. It is not possible for a tale of this size to stay a palace whisper for an extended period of time in this digital era. Following the revelation of the claims, they quickly spread like wildfire over the whole world. The report was promptly picked up by major news sites and royal journalists, and analysts soon began scrutinizing every supposed word. Newspapers published pieces that were full of conjecture, while discussion programs on television held panels to discuss the consequences of the situation. A rapid, impassioned, and widely divided response has been received from the general people. A number of hashtags, including when Diana was right and Joshua royal secrets, started trending on social media platforms. Many people, especially those who had fond memories of the 1990s, found Edward's stated honesty to be a welcome and refreshing change. The fact that he spoke the truth, which many people have thought for a long time, that Diana was a victim of a cruel and merciless system, earned him plaudits for his bravery. His statements are considered by this camp as a step toward justice for Diana, a last recognition of her suffering from inside the family itself. This camp believes that his words are symbolic of this. The response of a different element of the public, on the other hand, has been one of anxiety and even fury. The purported words made by Edward are seen as a reckless act of betrayal by those who are staunch monarchists and those who cherish the tradition of caution that the royal family has maintained. It is their contention that bringing up the past serves no purpose other than to undermine the stability of the monarchy and to inflict suffering on King Charles at a crucial juncture in one of his reigns. According to them, this is not openness. Rather, it is a reckless airing of family concerns that ought to have been kept private. One of the most intriguing responses has come from younger people, many of whom were not even born during Diana's lifetime. This is perhaps the most fascinating comment. In their minds, her narrative is often seen through the prism of the experiences that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have had. When they look at the two ladies, they see a pattern of the institution failing to protect and assist individuals who dare to defy its standards. They see obvious similarities between the two women. This idea that the monarchy is intrinsically incapable of modernizing has been strengthened by Edward's statements, which have given fuel to the fire. In keeping with expectations, the palace has maintained its formal silence. On the other hand, the absence of an official declaration has not been very effective in calming the storm. As a matter of fact, the silence is a reaction in and of itself. It gives the impression of a problem for which there is no simple solution, a wound that is so deep that every public remark runs the danger of making it much worse. To summarize, a long overdue reckoning has happened. The presumed choice made by Prince Edward to break his silence is more than simply a transitory drama involving the royal family. It is a possible turning moment for the House of Windsor, which is represented by this thing. Over the course of many decades, the major survival strategy of the monarchy has been to endure, to maintain silence, and to wait for violent storms to pass. The words of Edward, on the other hand, imply that some storms do not pass. They continue to linger, and that certain facts will not stay buried forever. The discoveries that he has reportedly made have forced a reckoning that has been long overdue. They have brought the spirit of Diana back into the palace, not as a sad victim or a romanticized symbol, but rather as a real person whose suffering had actual repercussions. They have done this by bringing inside the castle the ghost of Diana. King, who was 75 years old at the time, was obviously impacted by his brother's comments, which is a strong monument to the notion that history, particularly when it is very personal, is never completely in the past. It remains to be seen if Prince Edward's participation will eventually assist the monarchy in healing and evolving, or whether it will disclose fault lines that are too deep to fix. However, there is one thing that can be said with absolute certainty: the storm that the Prince of Calm has been waiting for has come, and the royal landscape may never be the same again. It's possible that this is the chapter in the continuous saga of the British monarchy when quiet is ultimately no longer considered more valuable than gold. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts, and goodbye for now.